The Ravens are looking to bounce back and get their first preseason victory, but so are the Falcons. And here to preview the game with me is Aaron from Locked On Falcons. Let's get it. Let's talk Ravens with Yolanda. Today's video, we are going to discuss each player that makes up the offensive line. Good evening, Ravens flock. And with us tonight, we have a very special guest that I'm so excited because Aaron from Locked On Falcons is here to preview this upcoming matchup. Aaron, thank you for joining the show. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing great. Love to be talking about football where it's just right around the corner, right?
Ooh, I've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, and I feel like people don't take me seriously because I've been saying it like, okay, she keeps saying football's right here. Started mini camp. Football's almost here. Then training camp. Football's right here. But you're right. We're here. So will you please introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do here in these social media streets?
Yeah, I'm Aaron Freeman, host of Locked On Falcons, a daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. You can find it, of course, on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's basically my main thing. Occasionally, I'll write some things over at the Falcoholic, the SB Nation website for the Atlanta Falcons. My original Twitter got suspended last year. I haven't been able to get it back. So I'm mostly tweeting from Locked On Falcons, the official Twitter account from the podcast. But apparently if you support Megan Thee Stallion after her incident with Tory Lanez, you will get suspended on Twitter. That's what I found out last year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Didn't know that, but good to know. Good information to know. Thank you. Well, listen, we are not going to be here long. Football is on. It's not the Ravens and it's not the Falcons, but hey, it's still football. So we are here for a good time, not a long time. But before we begin, as customary here, I like to say hello and give a warm welcome to everyone who has already joined in the chat. All right. First up, we have with us tonight, Tim Hughes. Good evening to you. I'm going to fix this because this is bothering me. I don't want the background there. But Tim, how are you tonight? I hope you're doing well. He said, whoop, whoop, notification just went off. And he is saying that he got the notification. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining. We also have with us 86 Ghost. Good evening to you. Thank you, Brandon Bazel, for joining. Lady Laura Baltimore, good evening. Thank you, thank you. We also have, Odin is 10 and Connor is 5. They both say, let's go Ravens. Odin, Connor, yes, let's go Ravens. I hope you're wearing your jersey this weekend when we play them because we need all the support. We need all the help we can get to rally our team to victory. Good evening, Nana. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for being here. Hope you're well. The Hawk TV, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, thank you. Wow, I see we have a full house tonight already. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you. Glad to have you. I'm thank you so much for welcoming him and making him feel welcome on this channel. Thank you, thank you. And do what Nana said. As you enter the building, go ahead and do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up. Give me a like if you're enjoying the content. And trust me, the show is going to be fire. So let's just jump right into it. Thank you, Tim. I'm glad you're looking forward to the show. It's going to be a good one. Aaron, let me take that off the screen. There we go. Okay. Aaron, so listen, I had this all mapped out. I knew exactly what we were going to discuss tonight, but let's just scratch all that and start with the most important topics. Why are these Falcons out here making these big splash moves? Talk to me about Matt Judon signing and just recently, as a couple of hours ago, Justin Simmons.
Well, I should probably be asking you about Matt Judon and what the Falcons are getting him from his days in Baltimore. But yeah, the Falcons really needed to invest a little bit more resources in their defense, especially after they had a couple of injuries over the weekend in their first preseason game against the Miami Dolphins, where a rookie in Braylon Trice, their third round pick this past year, he tore his ACL in that game. He's out for the season. They lost a safety, their backup safety, DeMarco Helms, who was a seventh round pick last year, but he was expected to push for a starting job across from Jesse Bates, competing with Richie Grant, who's their fourth year second round pick from a couple of years ago. And he is out for an indefinite amount of time. We're expecting him to kind of go on short term IR at the beginning of the season, and we don't know when he'll be back at some point this season. And so you had two holes in terms of your safety position, and you had, a real big hole at the pass rush. The Falcons lost two big free agents, another one that Ravens fans are familiar with Calais Campbell, and probably also familiar with Bud Dupree from his days in Pittsburgh. And so they didn't really do a whole lot to replace those guys this offseason. And so now they get Matt Judon. Obviously, he was a little disgruntled in New England because they didn't necessarily get him a new deal, and he thought he had outplayed his previous deal. And we'll see if he gets a new deal in Atlanta. He gets traded for a third round pick. He's going to be a big boost to their pass rush, a proven edge rusher to go along with two really good veteran D tackles in Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. And then you add Justin Simmons, who's been one of the best ball hawking safeties in the NFL, has 30 interceptions over the last 8 seasons, which I think is the most in the NFL in that time. And you tag team him with Jesse Bates, who I think, if he wasn't in the lead in interceptions last year, he was close to it last year with 6 interceptions. Definitely led the Falcons in that regard and had an all-pro season. So you add two real big pieces to this defense that you really kind of ignored if you were the Falcons, at least in free agency. You added some young pieces in the draft, but nobody that was really going to kind of change the math for this Falcons defense. And so they finally were able to invest some resources into that side of the ball this past week. And it was, better late than never, I guess, is what you say when it comes this close to the season as opposed to earlier in the offseason.
I can tell you what you're getting in Matt Judon. Now, obviously, he hasn't played with the Ravens for a couple of years, but this is someone who I personally wanted to come back home. I was vying for Matt Judon. We could stand to use some help at edge just because we have David Ojabo, who at this moment, we don't know if he's going to be cleared to play. He's practicing, which is a good sign, but the doctors still to this day have not cleared him to play. I don't know if we will see him in the preseason, which that's going into one of my questions for you later. Who are you looking to see this game? For me, it's David Ojabo, because we need to see what we have at edge. He, has not really been healthy. He's not made a big return on investment for us since we drafted him, and because of injuries. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what we have in him. However, that being said, I am cautious, right? When you have players who are returning from injuries, season-ending injuries, when you have players returning from those types of injuries, I'm always careful. I err on the side of caution because you just don't know what to expect. You hope and you pray and you fingers crossed that it's going to work out. And if it does, great. But what's your backup plan? So for that reason, I wanted Matt Judon. He knows the system. He knows he plays like a Raven. That's a saying that we have over here, that dog mentality that I'm going to get after you no matter what. And that edge rush position that you're getting in Matt Judon, you're still getting a premier edge rusher. So kudos to you to the Falcons for making that happen. That's someone who I wanted to see come to our team. And speaking of Justin Simmons, that's another one. I wanted him earlier, a few weeks ago before we signed our safety, Eddie Jackson. I wanted Justin Simmons. I thought he would be a good addition, but, it wasn't to be. So pairing your secondary with Justin now and Bates, you've got something there. You've got something serious. However, I will say that the Ravens also have something serious in their secondary. I like to call them the scary secondary. We have in our backfield Kyle Hamilton, who is that Swiss Army knife that will really cut you deep if you're not paying attention. And heck, even if you are paying attention, he's just that good. So, we have Marcus Williams, that ball hawk safety as well, to pair alongside him. So we're right there with you. And I see we have a few other people who've joined, so I do want to take a moment to say hello to them. One of whom is my mom. Thank you so much, Mom, for being here. Thank you, thank you. Good evening. We have my guys from the Woo Pig podcast. That's right. If you love Razorback, Arkansas football, basketball, head over to the Woo Pig podcast. Give them a follow. You'll be glad you did. And hola to you, Zeke. Thank you so much for being here. Odin said that with a big smile. Tell Odin he's right here with me. That's my guy. Thank you. I appreciate him watching the show. We also have with us Hendo from the Rogue Pod. Good evening. Good evening. Oh boy, I skipped over one. Fresh Life. I don't know that I've seen you around these internet streets, in these Raven Talk with Yolanda streets, but if you have been here before, thank you so much for coming back. But if you've not, if this is your first time, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. We also have with us Coach Evans from Sip to Tally Films. Please go over to Coach Evans' channel, Sip to Tally. Click on his avatar, take you right on over to his channel. Same thing with Hendo. Hendo from the Rogue Pod has a channel of his own doing big things, reporting on these Baltimore Ravens. So make sure you go over and give them a follow. Back to our show now. Aaron, I got to ask you. I have to ask. This thing just doesn't want to do right tonight, but that's fine. We're just going to keep going. Now, I wanted to start with the question I wanted to ask was, how did you feel about drafting, your quarterback, bringing in, drafting Michael Penix after you paid Kirk Cousins all that money? What were your thoughts?
It was a surprise. It was a surprise to see the Falcons do that, just because we haven't seen a team do what they did this offseason, which is pay a big contract to a quarterback like Kirk Cousins that has multiple years of guaranteed money. We've seen teams go out there and sign a veteran, but usually for like 1 year, like you saw New England do this way. They signed Jacoby Brissett for 1 year. They draft Drake May, and with the expectation that Drake May is going to play in year two, if not year one. And the Falcons go out there and give Kirk Cousins basically $100 million guaranteed over the next 2 years. And basically, regardless of what happens with Kirk Cousins, can't really get rid of him if he plays poorly. Obviously, if he plays well, then, maybe you want to keep him beyond 2 years. And so you have this situation with Michael Penix that they're likening it to the Jordan Love situation with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, but that was a little different just because it's not necessarily a top 10 pick, and the Falcons had an opportunity, going back to what I was talking about with the need to upgrade that pass rush. They had an opportunity to get one of the top pass rushers in the draft, potentially Laiatu Latu, wound up going to the Colts at pick 15. And so it was a little bit of a head scratcher for the Falcons, given that they have their quarterback for right now. They wanted to plan for the quarterback beyond that point and have Michael Penix potentially sit the bench for 2+ years. And we just haven't seen a team do that with a top 10 pick. But with Penix, it was a head scratcher on the night, but as you get through it, you start to think about what the potential of what he could be, and being that long-term, sort of franchise quarterback, which has been an issue for the Falcons these last couple of years in the post Matt Ryan era, who was, their starter for 14 years and the best quarterback in franchise history. I'm sure Ravens fans, I don't know if Ravens fans have as much an issue with Matt Ryan as some Falcon fans had with Joe Flacco. And it was a weird little beef back in the day. I don't know if that's still going on, but I think with Penix, it's been refreshing to sort of see him develop, and I thought he had a very impressive game on Friday night against the Dolphins in his first NFL action, and you got to see some of the things that led to the Falcons falling in love with him enough to take him at that 8th overall selection, despite pretty much nobody seeing it coming.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming, but like Tim said, he said he thinks that that's a good move. He thinks that for the Falcons that, drafting him is a good move. He's going to be, a very good player, a good quarterback for you guys in the future. And Fresh Life, I remember you now. Yes, we were chatting on one of the other either a stream or a video, so I'm glad you came by and made the live stream. So thank you so much for that. Question for you about your quarterback situation. In terms of Michael Penix, how did he play in the first game, your preseason opener?
He looked solid. It was an impressive debut. He missed a couple of throws, but for the most part, I think it was like 9 for 16 in that game. He had a really great sort of deep pass, sort of dropped it in a bucket on like a 40-yard play to one of the Falcons' backup wide receivers, Chris Blair, in that game. And that was really the sort of strength of Penix at the University of Washington, his ability to tack down the field. And you got to see that on display. I think the thing that was most impressive that he showed in that Miami Dolphins game, and it seemed like maybe he was taking some lessons from the left-handed quarterback that Miami has in Tua Tagovailoa, which was he really operated the quick game. They were getting the ball out pretty quickly on a lot of those plays, and he showed that he's not just a guy that just has to push the ball down the field and live and die by the deep ball, but also a guy that could, operate in the underneath and get the ball out quickly to his playmakers and whatnot. And I thought he looked really good doing that. That was something I thought he could do, but he just didn't get the opportunity to do it just because Washington's offense was so oriented around the deep pass. And it was nice to sort of see that kind of confirmed on Friday night against the Dolphins, where he was able to showcase that he has the ability to sort of operate, not just on the deep passes, but also the short and intermediate throws.
Yeah, that's when I was just reading through his stats from the first game, 9 for 16, 104 yards, no turnovers. That's very impressive for, his first NFL game. I thought, wow, this is a really good investment long term for you, for the Falcons. One thing I'll say about the quarterback position in terms of the Ravens. As it stands now, our backup quarterback situation is a little concerning. It's a little troubling. We had Josh Johnson on the field, who is a very experienced veteran, but you wouldn't know it from his play the last game. You just really wouldn't. If you didn't know anything about who this person was, you wouldn't know that he's been in the league for, 25 years. I don't know how long he's been in, but he's been in for a long time. But he did not take command of this offense the way that we would, or I'm going to speak for myself. He did not take command of the offense the way I would have wanted to see him, or the way I would have expected a veteran who has been around so many years to do. The offense for us under his helm leading the charge was just not firing on, I don't even want to say all cylinders. We barely made it fire on one or two. It just did not look cohesive. It didn't look, another word I could say is maybe underprepared. That's kind of the feeling that I got. I just didn't feel that this, the offense with Josh leading it was prepared, ready to go. So in terms of what you would like to see from your offense this game, in terms of like what you didn't see in the last game, what would that be?
Well, the Falcons experienced something similar last week with Taylor Heineke, their experienced backup quarterback, looking underprepared in a game. So I would like to see him play better, just so we can get a better look at some of the other backup players on the offense, some of those backup wide receivers that are competing, maybe not necessarily for a roster spot, but have an opportunity to make a bid for the practice squad and be guys that the Falcons can stash as developmental options. So that's one thing I want to see from the Falcons' third string quarterback in Taylor Heineke. But I think probably the main things that I want to see is I want to see Michael Penix continue to build off of his initial success against Miami. I want to see him get maybe a little bit more looks. He got 5 series last week. I would love to see him play an entire half this week and see how he operates with that. And the other main thing that I really want to see from the Falcons on Saturday against the Ravens is I want to see improved play from their offensive line. Their running game was pretty abysmal for most of that Dolphins game. They did kind of get things going late in the game once like the deep reserves were in the game. But that second string offensive line that started the game and will likely see them start the game, the Falcons have danced around sort of publicly admitting that they're not going to play their starters, but they're almost certainly not going to play their starters this week. And with the injuries that they had last week, I think they're going to probably sit a couple of key backups as well. And so I want to see that backup offensive line really get it going in the run game after really kind of getting pushed around by the Dolphins early in that game. And I want to see them be able to assert their will against a very tough and physical Ravens defense. And if they can do that, that will allow them to be able to sustain some drives this week. I think the Falcons had like 17 possessions last week, which is a ridiculous amount. And it was just mostly because they just kept going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out because they couldn't run the football. And so that's probably one of the main things in addition to seeing Penix in his second action.
I will say for the Ravens on offense, the offensive line was a pleasant surprise. Not perfect. And again, we didn't play our starters either. Well, some of them are projected to be starters. A few of the O linemen are projected to be starters, but we didn't play our center, we didn't play our left tackle. So we had some players who are now filling this gap of offensive line, building that wall for Lamar Jackson for his protection, who were question marks and for me because we'd never seen them play in the NFL. We have a rookie in Roger Rosengarten. We have Andrew Voorhees, although technically not a rookie, he was sidelined due to injury. And so this is his first NFL, this is the first time that he's actually taken the field to play an NFL game. So I was pleasantly surprised by our O-line. There's room for improvement. Absolutely. Certainly. There's room to grow. And it was good to see that this was the starting point for them. I'd like to see them be more aggressive. Of course. Absolutely. Not getting bullied. One thing that I will add to that is it's hard to assess our wide receivers because we had so many in rotation. But more importantly, it was hard to assess the wide receivers because of I don't want to say abysmal play of Josh Johnson, but I mean, there's just really no other word that I can use. The terrible, horrible play of the quarterback. So for you, in terms of wide receivers, Casey Washington, I saw that he had 3 catches, 27 yards and 9 targets. That was really good. So he was pretty impressive. Who else in the wide receiver tight end room impressed you on offense?
Yeah, Casey Washington had a chance to play with Penix, and that's a big reason why he was able to get going because Penix could actually complete some passes, and Taylor Heinicke wasn't doing so hot in that regard. But that's, to me, where I want to see someone else kind of step up, where you didn't really, you got that one big catch from Chris Blair against Michael Penix, and I'm blanking on really anybody else really standing out other than Washington and Blair. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting somebody else, but that's kind of what I want to see. I want to see someone else step up. The Falcons have already lost a couple of wide receivers due to injury. Rondale Moore to IR last week. He went down in joint practices against the Dolphins. Jakeem Grant, who they signed over the weekend to replace Rondale Moore, apparently he's dealing with a hamstring injury. He just went on IR today, so we're not going to get him. So there's really a golden opportunity for one of these wide receivers to really kind of step up and make some plays. And again, it goes back to getting better quarterback play from especially Taylor Heinicke. And obviously, if Michael Penix can continue to play well, that will be a big boost for them. So to be honest with you, I don't know if the Falcons have another wide receiver or a tight end right now that can, do some things because they just haven't gotten the level of quarterback play, at least after Penix, to really show that. So I guess for me, if I'm looking at anybody to kind of step up this weekend, I would like to see Chris Blair maybe do a little bit more as well. At the tight end position, the Falcons drafted John Fitzpatrick a couple of years ago in the 6th round out of Georgia. He missed his rookie season with an injury and barely played last year as the 4th string tight end. And I would like to see, what he has, and see if this draft pick can pay off a little bit more this season. And if he can get going on Saturday as a blocker and as the receiver, that I think would be great for him.
Yeah, that's good. One player that I have that I'm really keeping an eye on, I don't know if he will even play any games in the preseason because he is a starter for us. At wide receiver is Rashad Bateman. I just think he needs the reps. Will the Ravens play him? Probably not. Or if they do, he'll have limited snaps. But this is someone who, on offense, I really want to see how he's doing, how he's progressing. He's another return of investment we really haven't seen because of injuries. But I don't know if we'll see him this week. I don't know if he's cleared to play. And if he is, will the Ravens make that executive decision to sit him? Who knows? Running back, we had Owen Wright last week. He had a pretty impressive run. I think it was 33 carries for, 7 carries for 33 yards. He did really good. And as I mentioned, the O-line looked better than expected. So This will be interesting for me to pay more attention to our wide receivers, how we rotate them, how we utilize them, how are we going to, lead the charge with our quarterbacks? Are we going to have Josh Johnson playing the entire first half, or do we get him off the field earlier if we see it's not working out, and then give Devin Leary an opportunity? What do we do? So that's kind of my focus, along with the O-line too. I want to make sure that it wasn't just like a one-time thing. I want to make sure that, okay, they can take what they did in that game against the Eagles, build upon it, and I want to look for growth and incremental improvement. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. One of your undrafted rookies, I think, is OJ Hilaire. He almost changed the trajectory. Now that's a tongue twister. You try and say that 5 times real fast. He almost changed the tide of the game, because if he was able to haul in that touchdown with only 1 minute remaining, we'd be looking at a different outcome. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there you go. There's a wide receiver that I forgot about that had an opportunity to make a play. Probably why I forgot about it, because he did make the play. But yeah, I thought of the group, playing in the fourth quarter, because when you get into the fourth quarter of these preseason games, these are basically guys that are probably not going to make the roster that they're currently playing for, but they're looking to kind of impress that maybe somebody else will sort of scoop them up. And I think that's kind of the case for OJ Hilaire. I don't think he's going to make the roster, but he can show some things to make maybe the practice squad for the Falcons. And even though he didn't make the sort of key play at the end of the game to win the game, like I saw some flashes from him with his speed and his quickness that makes me intrigued. And so he's one of those players that I would love to see step up on Saturday.
Yeah. We have a handful too. We have a handful of players at wide receiver who we're just kind of like checking out. We're looking to see what can they do, what can they contribute. I want to say it's like 8, maybe 9 of them that we're going to, that they're going to be put in rotation to see what they can do. But who knows if they'll make if they even have a chance to make the roster. Maybe one of them has an opportunity to. But certainly, like you mentioned, practice squad. This might be their audition for another team, perhaps. We'll see. Moving on to the defense. After watching the preseason opener against the Dolphins, what are your biggest takeaways on defense for the Falcons going into this upcoming matchup?
I think the Falcons' depth on defense is pretty good, right? I think overall, when I compare the offense and the defense, it's basically like Michael Penix and Casey Washington on offense, and that was about it. And the defense, in terms of the players that impressed me, it was a number of players. Like, they were able to play some guys that have been proven in the NFL, right? Eddie Goldman got some playing time. He looked good. Kentavious Streets kind of bounced around the league. He had a really nice pass rush that really disrupted a play on a key third down. Zach Harrison was the Falcons' 3rd-round pick last year. He looks like he's making a big jump in year 2. He had 2 quarterback hits, one of which led to an interception from Kevin King, who's a veteran cornerback that spent several years in Green Bay but has been out of football for the last 2 years. That's the same thing with Eddie Goldman. He's been out of the football for the last 2 years, and you just kind of wonder with both of those guys, do they still have it, to be able to play after missing 2 years? Eddie Goldman, due to, basically retiring multiple times over the last couple of years, and whether or not does he have that fire, and seemingly he did on Friday night. And then Kevin King, mostly due to injuries he's missed the last 2 years, and it looks like he's back. He got that interception. He almost had another one. The other cornerback opposite him, Antonio Hamilton, a veteran that the Falcons picked up from the Arizona Cardinals this offseason, he also looked good. He was just kind of laying guys out. He had like 3 or 4 big hits in that game as well. So I think the Falcons defense has a lot more sort of standout players, and they all look good. And I think it would be an interesting challenge to see going up against this Ravens, especially as you talked about with that offensive line, where Miami's offensive line is not particularly great. And that was something that was a common, sort of observation in their joint practices the week before. So the Falcons, not to take shots at Miami, but the Falcons defensive line sort of having their way with them in that game on Friday night wasn't a surprise. But I think if they could do the same to a much more physical Ravens team on Saturday, that would be much more of a testament that, hey, these young guys that are going to be backups to guys like Matt Judon and Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata, these guys are ready to contribute right away. And that will be a huge boost for the Falcons defense, just because those three veterans that I just named, and Jared Onyemata and Judon, aren't getting any younger, and they just sort of need to maybe be on a pitch count so that the Falcons can get the most out of them this upcoming season. And the more of these younger players, as well as some of the veteran guys like Eddie Goldman and Kentavious Street, that can be, reliable contributors this upcoming season, I think will be huge for the Falcons defense.
The one thing about the Baltimore Ravens, they are incredibly stacked on defense. We have a lot of positions that have multiple players who can come in and play and give you instant, just an instant boost. With the exception of edge, as I mentioned earlier, I think that would be the one position group that I would say, we should have gotten Judon, but it's too late for that now. But in terms of I'll start from the back and work my way to the front. Start from the secondary. Even though we did not play our starters, we got a chance to see how good Nate Wiggins is. He came out of the gate swinging. It was like no fly zone here. Not on my watch, Nate. That's what I call him. He is very sticky in coverage for our cornerback. He does not let his man get away from him. He's very good. Excellent in coverage, speedster, just all the things that you want in a first round pick, right? All the things. We also got a chance to see a couple of players who had not really been able to contribute heretofore because of injury. Jalen Armour-Davis, Pepe Williams. I think we had maybe 1 or 2 sacks in this last game against the Eagles. One of them was, Pepe Williams, and we had not seen Pepe at all. It was Pepe, where are you? We had not seen him at all. So just to be able to hear his name being called, and not only that, for him to be able to get a sack in his first game that he's played in I don't know how long, that was impressive. And, we have a very good linebacker. Our linebackers are not in terms of our starters, obviously we didn't play them, but we've got Roquan Smith. And I've already talked to you about Kyle Hamilton back there in the backfield, so we have a lot of good talent. This year, we are asking Tavius Robinson, second year. We're also asking Trenton Simpson, second year. We're asking them to step up. We lost Patrick Queen in the offseason, but that's okay. I think that, from where Patrick Queen was in going into his second year, and if you compare apples to apples, where Trenton Simpson is going into his second year, I think the ceiling is higher for Trenton Simpson than it is for Patrick Queen. That's not to take anything away from Patrick Queen because he was great. I loved watching him last year, pairing him with Roquan Smith. They were outstanding. But, in his absence, we're asking in Patrick Queen's absence, we're now asking Trenton Simpson to step up. We're going to see what Tavius Robinson can do too. So these are some positions that I'm watching. But for the one, if I had to say the one position group on the defense from this last game for us that gives me a little bit of, I don't want to say concern, but I will say it's going to raise my eyebrows this upcoming game, is our D-line. We just did not have an answer to stop the run. That's not acceptable. That's not going to that's not going to cut it. It just seemed as though the Eagles marched their way right down the field on us. We didn't have a response, very little. And so for me, we've got to be able to find a way to get pressure up the middle. We've got to find a way for our edge rushers to get, apply pressure as well and get that quarterback on the ground. It doesn't matter who is out there. We need to be able to do that. So those are a couple of things that I'm watching on our defense. And one thing we didn't do this last game is create turnovers. I want to see our defense be able to do that. How about your defense in terms of turnovers?
Yeah, they were able to get an interception from Kevin King. They almost got a second one from Kevin King where he was able to jump a throw, but unfortunately, cornerbacks and hands, right? They would be wide receivers that they had great hands, right, is what they say. But, I think the Falcons' defense was very opportunistic. They were very aggressive. They were out there, really going after, as I said, with Antonio Hamilton, the cornerback. He laid a couple of people out. They had a linebacker. I kind of forget which linebacker it was. I think it was Milo Eifler. I confused him and Donovan Mooten forgive me. It's only one preseason game. I'll get them straight by the time we get to the third one. But one of those two linebackers was able to deliver a big hit in the game. The safety, Dane Cruikshank, was able to deliver a big hit in that game as well. So it was nice to see the young guys kind of flying around, and some of the veterans as well, just sort of bringing that energy that I'm sure Ravens fans are very familiar with, watching their defense over the last 30 years of great defensive plays. So it's one of those things where that is not something that Falcon fans are used to. Like, we do not have a history of great defense. We have a history of very terrible defenses. So that is something that I like to see. And that style of play, I think, is very conducive to being able to create those turnovers where you're going around, hitting guys, jarring the ball loose, and maybe some of those turn into fumbles, some of those turn into deflections. So I think, based off of what they were able to do against Miami, getting a couple of interceptions, I'm hoping that they can add to that total on Saturday against Baltimore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think we had any interceptions, and that's, as I mentioned, that's something that I'm kind of keeping my eye on to see if we can do that this upcoming game. We do have a question for you, Aaron. So Tim Hughes wants to know, with the new kickoff rules, our head coach seems to be pretty excited about it. How are the Falcons preparing for that? Good question, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, I would imagine John Harbaugh would be pretty excited given his special teams background. I'm sure he's given, leading all team meetings with new kickoff rule policies and whatnot. But yeah, I think the Falcons to me, this is going to be one of the most fascinating things about this upcoming NFL season, because I think so far in the preseason, the Falcons are also one of these teams that are doing. Teams seem to be pretty vanilla in what they're kind of showing on the new kickoff, and just sort of treating it like a standard kickoff, just catch the ball, run it. But there's all these rumors about, like, once the games actually start, like, we're going to see starting the trick plays and option plays, and teams are going to be doing a lot of various things. And I thought when the team signed Jakeem Grant over the weekend, adding another experienced returner, they already have Avery Williams, who's coming off he tore his ACL last year. He missed last year, but he was very productive in the previous years. They picked up Ray McLeod from the Pittsburgh Steelers, or from the 49ers, who used to play for the Steelers, been a long-time return specialist. So they have several guys in their building that have return skills at this point in time. And so that, to me, kind of hints that I think the Falcons have some creative plans for what they're going to do on kickoffs, having two or more guys back there. And so I'm very intrigued. We haven't really gotten to see what they have up their sleeve, but I think the Falcons are like so many other teams that they're kind of holding their cards close to the vest and whatnot. And so we're going to see them unveil some interesting and creative ways on these kickoffs once the regular season starts. So far, to answer your question, Tim, not a whole lot to say so far in the preseason, but I think good things are coming when it comes to the kickoff rules once we get to September.
Yeah, as Tim said, because of Harbaugh's, special teams background and his experience, he's really excited for these new kickoff rules. So, but these teams are playing very vanilla right now, and it's just the first game in the preseason. We'll see how these teams continue to match up. But if you have questions, I didn't say this earlier, if you have a question for myself or that you'd like Aaron to answer, please leave it in the comment section, or please leave a comment for us here. And if you happen to be watching on replay, thank you so much. Please leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer your questions. So, Aaron, now moving on to offensive strategy, defensive strategy. What do you think the approach will be for your offense going against the Ravens defense?
I am going to be curious to see if the Falcons change their approach, because I think last week they didn't run a lot of play action passing. And that's one of the things that we're expecting with their new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, coming from the LA Rams, to implement a high degree of play action. And they sort of ran a couple of plays, I think maybe 3 plays between Heineke and Penix for the first 3 quarters, but that, I think that winds up being like 10% of their plays were play action. But I think that number, when we get to the regular season, is going to be closer to like 30%. And so I'm very curious if we start to see a little bit more of the play action this week against Baltimore, or are the Falcons, again, going to play vanilla so that they can, maybe catch a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers sleeping in week 1. I'm sure Ravens fans would enjoy that if they can put a 30 burger on that Steelers defense, which I'm hoping for. Part of our revenge against Arthur Smith, the former Falcons head coach and whatnot, but that's a whole nother conversation. But Yeah, I think the strategy so far has been pretty conservative, pretty vanilla. A lot of quick passing, as I said, taking a couple of shots down the field as they did with Penix, but nothing major. Just kind of, they're going to run the football. They're going to try to dink and dunk their way down the field, try to put some long drives together. That's what their strategy was against Miami. Because of the poor running game and the poor offensive line play in that running game, they weren't able to do that to the degree that I think they wanted to. But I want to see them do, even if they do play that sort of conservative style, I want to see them be able to execute it better this week.
In terms of our offensive strategy to match up against your defense, I don't know what the strategy is going to be. I just know it needs to be strategy equals improvement, starting with the quarterback all the way down on this offense. That's what I think the strategy needs to be. Like, make sure that whoever we have leading this offense, that they look a lot better than they did this past week against the Eagles. That needs to be the strategy. Whatever they do from there, make sure they're able to put points on the board. That's obviously the thing that we need them to be able to do. And the offensive line continue to develop, continue to progress. This week, today we learned that our offensive line coach, Joe D, he is going to be out on medical leave for an extended time, and I hope, and my thoughts and prayers are with him. I hope for a speedy recovery. And we brought in the interim, George Warhop. So we'll see how he does. This is his moment now. He's taking over, I think, effective today or maybe yesterday. I'm not sure, but we'll see. On defense for the Falcons, on offense for the Falcons going up against the Ravens defense, what do you think the strategy is going to be?
Yeah, I think they'll just play conservative, run the football, and see if they can string some long drives together.
Yeah. For us, our defense, I think for us, our defense going against your offense, we're going to continue to be the dominant defense that we've seen. I don't think any of that is going to change. I don't know that Wiggins is going to play. We did have a couple of injuries in the last game. Wiggins was being one of them with a shoulder injury. Chris Board had, I believe, a concussion. Kane was evaluated for a stinger. So, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of change on the defense, but the one thing, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm looking for is their ability from the D-line to stop the run. That's what I'm looking for, against your offense. And with that, I just want to ask you, are there any injuries that might affect this upcoming game who may have played last week, might not be playing this week?
I think the biggest one is their rookie second round pick, Rook Ororo, who was dealing with a shoulder injury this week. They had a couple of nicks the last couple of days in practice, and I think those guys are going to get held out. But Rook Ororo is probably the main one, that he's coming off a week one game against the Dolphins where it was a little underwhelming given that he was the team's second pick in the draft. They traded up to get him. And so there was a lot of expectations for him to come in and perform right away. And so we won't really get to see him kind of redeem himself this week, I think, if he's going to be held out due to that shoulder injury. So that's probably the main injury. But there's a couple other players that have some nicks that I think are going to probably be left out. But to be honest with you, I'm blanking on those players right now.
That's okay. I have a question here. Tim Hughes, Odin wants to, and Connor want to know, they're his sons. They want to know my thoughts on Trenton Simpson with the green dot. Odin, Connor, I was surprised that Trenton Simpson had the green dot, but then I thought, well, nobody else would be able to do it because we're not playing our starters, or, our other starters. I was surprised that he wore the green dot, but it was a pleasant surprise. I think Trenton Simpson, that was an opportunity for him to show that he can do it, that he's ready. And, wearing the green dot is significant. And the fact that he was the one to do it, I mean, I couldn't ask for much more from him. Trenton Simpson led us in tackles, I believe. He had maybe 11 total tackles, maybe 5 solo. So Odin, Connor, let's look to see how he does this upcoming week. I think Trenton Simpson is just stacking, building upon a good foundation, and having Roquan Smith in his ear, guiding him, coaching him along the way is not going to do it's going to do it's going to only be beneficial for him moving forward. Okay, couple last questions for you before we get out of here. And please, in the chat, leave yours, let me know your score prediction. Aaron, who is going to win this game on Saturday?
Well, the Falcons don't have a great history of winning preseason games. It's kind of a thing. So I honestly expect the Ravens to kind of pull this one out, but I'm expecting a sort of close, hard-fought game that'll probably come down to the final possession. Maybe the Falcons will have a chance, like they did last week, to maybe make things interesting at the end of the game. But I'd probably predict the Ravens to kind of win this game like 20-17 or something like that.
20-17. I don't know that it's going to be that high of a scoring game. And that's because I still have a question mark at what we're going to do at quarterback. If that improves, then yeah, maybe it could be what you predict. I do think the Ravens are going to win. We're playing at home. And although we do have a winning record in preseason games that was snapped last offseason against the Commanders and obviously continuing last week against the Eagles. So there's that. But I do think because we are playing at home, we're going to have the advantage, even ever so slightly. My prediction is 14-10. I'm going to go with 14-10. I don't think our defense is going to allow your offense to do a whole lot. I think we're going to be able to contain them pretty well as long as we can stop the run. Otherwise, our pass defense is going to be solid. I don't know that I don't think the Falcons are going to get by with much more than 10 points, but if it is higher than a 14-10 score, I'd be pleasantly surprised if the Ravens are able to put up more points than that. Have a couple of others that have joined the chat, and I want to say hello, good evening. Oh no, little Joker. He said the Falcons stole his quarterback. Oh, I'm sorry. About that. Big Reg, he said he's taking the Falcons and Michael Penix to win. Wow, 17-6. Okay, tell me why. How did you arrive at that conclusion, Big Reg? I'd like to know. Yeah, and I'm with you, Kilicam. He said I expect Penix to dice us up. I don't know. We'll see. I think because we are such a good defense, and even that speaks to our backups on defense. I don't see Michael Penix coming out here dicing us up. I don't. I think he'll be effective. That's why I'm saying he'll have the Falcons will have 10 points. But if I want to be a little bit generous, maybe add I don't know. I had 3 more points on I don't know, but I still think the Ravens are going to win. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, but we'll see. And Agnes, thank you for joining. She said she hopes I'm right. I do too. I hope I'm right because I was not right about the Eagles game. I just knew we were winning that one, and I was clearly wrong. If not, we win 14-7. Okay. If you guys can, if you can run, you guys win 20-14. Ooh. Yeah, if you run the ball, then that's going to be a problem for us because we clearly didn't have an answer last week. Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, no pressure. That's what I said earlier. We've got to be able to find a way to get pressure up the middle to stop the run. And Kilicam says our backups aren't that good. They're not great. They're not great, but they were able to come out. He said we have tinted glasses. I'm not going to say tinted glasses. No. I'm hoping for a really solid performance from our backups. And like I said, our secondary is going to hold it down, even if our D-line can't get it right. I think our linebackers are going to be pretty good too. Michael Penix QB play will be on another level compared to what we faced in week 1, and our QB play will be trash again. Okay. I don't want to talk about our trash of a QB. Anyway, our trash of a backup QB, let me say it that way. I want to make sure that we're not saying that Lamar Jackson. Aaron, thank you so much for being here and for talking all things football with us, sharing your thoughts on the Falcons versus the Ravens matchup. Would you please let everyone know one more time where they can find you here on YouTube?
Yeah, now I can't talk. Yolanda, I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoy getting some insight into this Ravens team, so that when I'm watching some of these guys fly around, I can be like, oh yeah, that's the guy that Yolanda was talking about, making some plays and whatnot. So that always makes these preseason games a little bit more interesting. But obviously, if you want to get more insight into the Falcon side of things, of course, you can check out Locked On Falcons 5 days a week on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy snarky tweets about the Atlanta Falcons, check me out on Twitter at Locked On Falcons.
Again, thank you so much for coming out and spending some time with us. I'm not going to keep anyone longer because it's time to go watch some football. So family, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. We will see who comes out on the other side of victory on Saturday. Make sure you go over and follow Aaron on Locked On Falcons. Find him on all of his social media sites, and you will thank me later. Again, Aaron, a huge thank you to you for being here. I will see all of you all very soon. Take care, stay safe, and always remember